Good, hello. Now we're going to do our quick around the tour in 80 days of the history of graphic design, just so that we're all caught up for the remainder of the semester. So what this is going to entail is just a quick overview of essentially, I'll say 0 to Art Nouveau, which is where I believe most of you said the lecturing had stopped. So then that way we're all on the same page. Now I will have all these slides, the PDF in this unit, so you'll be able to look at this timeline. But what we're going to do is just briefly break down some of these. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm going to hit the highlights of this so that we can see where exactly graphic design merged from. In theory, I believe it was 1922 was when the term graphic design was coined. There it is. Actually, that is correct. 1922. So the term is relatively new in, perspective of history, of course, but everything communication-based sort of stacks upon each other. So that's what we're going to take a look at, starting with our cave paintings. And this is one of our earliest forms of communication. I have a link here, which is a really interesting website, the actual official Rococo cave over in France. You can do a virtual tour of it because, of course, due to humans in the environment, etc., the cave is shut down most of the time, unless it's via tickets. But what's nice with that is you're going to be able to see the whole cave system there and the different symbols and use of icons there. And again, this is just a form of communication. It's showing daily life, hunting, rituals. I really always loved the hands. The hands are a predominant symbol used in this era. And there's a lot of theories, of course, behind it. One of them that I liked was saying this is a way to make a sort of signature. So like the I was here concept, which I think is really interesting. These were made via chewing charcoal that you would find around the fire, putting your hand up on the cave wall, and essentially blowing the charcoal out of your mouth, sort of like spit, and it would make this sort of airbrushed impression on the cave wall. So these are really interesting. But why? And this is a spoiler alert. All of this is still up for interpretation. We're looking at around 38,000 BCE. So this is conjecture and us putting our story on theirs. But the theories behind it is storytelling. It's the narratives of their hunting expeditions. A lot of them do have religious rituals depicted in it. Ritualistic communication. And another one that's really interesting, I'll have this linked also in our unit, for territory marking or also just navigation. Like, okay, XYZ could be found here during this time of the year. And so when the next sort of mass would come in, you'd be able to relay that information to them. So again, pure conjecture, but it's really interesting to think about the why behind all of this, because we've always had this sort of natural inclination to tell our story. So how do you leave your mark, essentially? Petroglyphs and pictograms. I always like to introduce these just so that whenever you're in the making stage, say of branding or logo, the pictogram, which is more of a symbol, you can look back on this and sort of garner some inspiration from that. So the petroglyphs, if you break that down, it's petro and glyph, rock writing essentially. And this is an image just created by carving and or engraving as a form of rock art. And the pictogram is the graphic symbol that's going to convey some sort of meaning through visual resemblance to a physical object. Again, this narrative storytelling aspect. It's often related to hunting, navigation, spiritual beliefs, sort of like what we were seeing inside the caves, the same things happening outside the caves. And they're found worldwide, from the American Southwest to Scandinavia. These two were stateside. The first one at the top is from Moab, and then the other one is from Canyonlands. And the Canyonland ones is one of the ones you'll typically see in relation to the pictogram. A more contemporary approach to this, these are the national park symbols / icons. And so we are still taking that concept, and it's just evolved a little bit further down the pipeline so that we're able to, as a group or community, all understand what this is trying to communicate if we see this symbol in the park or in the wild, so to speak. From there, we get our writing systems more laid down into place and more structured. And then in Sumer, of course, language is Sumerian, and this is one of the oldest languages that we have, and the writing style was cuneiform. And there's a really interesting Instagram account of the people who are currently trying to decipher and or translate these, more likely translate. So I'll put that link in our notes as well. But what's interesting with this, it's the same thing what we were just saying, ritualistic to daily accounts, etc. And then we evolved this concept. And of course, the cuneiform tablets were a little bit heavy, and we also had that go up through Egyptian era. And so how do you lighten your writing style? So we have over in China these woodblock reliefs. And what's nice with this is these designs or characters are written into wooden blocks. The ink is put on it. The paper is pressed onto it. And then you're going to be able to have a lighter form of, I'm going to just call it bookkeeping for, simplification. But what's nice with this is, you have one cuneiform, you have one tablet in Egypt, but you can have multiples of these because it's going to allow for mass production. So this is great because then the ideas and information can spread as well as artistic expression. And of course, our trade routes are getting into place, so ideas are going to be exchanged from one place to another. And we're also at this period going to see the first movable type printing press. While, of course, Gutenberg tends to get the glory of this, it was already invented over in China. And what they were creating was these individual clay characters that you could rearrange and reuse them to print different texts. I know some of you in your notes were talking about you had interest in letterpress. So in theory, you could think of this as really early letterpress. And there's just another view of this. What's nice with this is it's flexible, it's efficient, especially when you're making written materials. These individual characters, of course, like we just said, just like the letterpress, can be rearranged to make new text. And it's going to speed up the production of books and documents, which is in turn going to spread literacy and cultural exchange. As a side note, if you're working along with the PDF, you're going to notice I have more in a lot of these corners of the page. These are links that will just give you more info on this if you want to do a little bit deeper dive, because like we said, this is around the world in 80 days as far as design goes. But if it's something you're interested in, I have put more resources for you to look at. All right, so we're creaking up the timeline a little bit. And we get heraldry, and the definition for this is it's the system of which coat of arms and other armorial bearings are devised, described, and regulated. So just think of this as the first form of logos. Who are you? Where are you from? What animal symbol are you being represented by? And so it's your sort of logo. Something I didn't talk about, but you probably have learned about in history or art history class is the cylinder seals. The cylinder seals I always find interesting because it's like an individual stamp or an autograph of your name that only you can have. So this is very similar in concept, but instead of being a three-dimensional stamp, in the sense, you have instead the heraldry. So Gutenberg, we already tiptoed into the Gutenberg land. And again, this is an invention that's going to help transform the production of books. And what's interesting with this, of course, if you have more books, you're going to have people who are going to want to read them. So you're going to get higher rates of literacy, etc. And just like what we saw with the printing blocks in China, it's going to give that cultural exchange throughout Europe. So again, this exchange of ideas, and we're communicating to the masses. Just some images of the type for this. So movable type in this format was invented in 15th century German by Gutenberg, and his type took clues from the dark, dense handwriting of the period in which we called it black letter. So this is, if you were reading right now in contemporary times an entire book in this style, it would give you a little bit of visual fatigue, but this is just the early stages of that design. So we're going to be growing from that, and a lot of our graphic design is going to be, stemming from this, and the ideas are going to evolve from this. So hard to read, question mark? Okay, let's work on that. The letterpress, friends, this is one of the movable types. You can still buy these today. These cases and sorts are arranged in a way that it is, sort of like our keyboards, the ASDF. It's arranged in a way that it's the most used, is easiest to the printer to access. So they're not in a normal order, a sorting order. And these are the cases on the right. And the California job case is the one that is a little bit more up towards our timeline. So if you go to, a flea market or yard sale and you see one of these, you're probably going to get the California job case. And you can see where the letters are larger, like that middle is MNHO, up top is IS, bottom AR. You're going to have more of those letters because they're going to be used more often. And then that way, again, they're right where the press people who are assembling the letters are able to access it quickly. So in this traditional storage, you're going to have two cases. So you're already going to know this, uppercase and lowercase, the majuscule and the minuscule. So we are still using that terminology today, and where it's stemming from is right now. So our uppercase, of course, denoting, start of the sentence, names, etc., and lowercase is the rest of it. It's going to be one of those clues that help us read a little bit better. So as far as reading a little bit better, Rococo might not be the best for that, because Rococo in design and art history is all about flourish and filigree and excess. So it's very florid, it's intricate with a lot of S and C curves and the letter forms. This is sort of the swoopy script, I'll call it. One of the people that we're going to look at is Pierre Simon Fournier Lejeune, and he pioneered standardization. Oh, the concept of standardization. Here we come. We want to try to figure out how, if we have, say, 100 print shops, how do we make it, a way that there's a system so that basically everyone's on that same page. So he got his training, and then he started his own independent type and design foundry. So what he's working with, he's designed a system of Roman, italic, script, and decorative, as well as the rules and ornaments for other Rococo printers to use. And the rules, let me get my mouse over. So the rules are these sort of separations that you're going to see here, and then the decoratives and the ornaments are all around. So, you're going to be working with a system that's relatively similar to what we have today in our Adobe suite. Around this period also is lithography. So this is the process of printing from a flat surface. So think of this as oil and water don't mix. This is essentially what's happening here. So the drawing that you're going to see on the stone here is done with a grease pen. And whenever you put water over the whole stone, it's going to repel off of it because oil and water don't mix. And so when you rub the ink or roll the ink over it, the ink stays on the part that's not wet. And then you're going to get this ink transfer. So this is going to start out pretty simple. And again, this is a really nice at the bottom, the source and more on the process so that you can see in action how this works. And on the left under more, I have one that is also like the video process of it because it's a really fascinating topic. But the early stages, it's just, black and white, used for posters, newspapers, etc., one-offs and or small series. But we start to get chromolithography towards, a couple years into this, and chromo meaning color. We're able to have what's essentially what we're used to today, like the CMYK, the 4-color process, except you need 4 stones in this case. And this is nice for poster design, etc. From this, we're going to get to the Industrial Revolution. So we're jumping through time pretty quickly, as we know. But with these, you're going to get some key features, and we're starting to see it anyway with our standardization. We're able to, let's say, the presses have mass production, et cetera. So with this, how do you mechanize this process for mass production? How can you have that standardization and repetition? So instead of, say, 5 books? What if it's 500 books or 5,000 books, etc.? This is also going to be, we're going to focus on the functionality of it. It's going to be in a sort of period of urbanization. And with that comes our visual communication and advertising, which we're seeing, of course, with lithography. The type at this time, I just wanted to give some visuals of what's happening because we saw it, we just saw it, the standardization with our Romans, our bold italics, black italic, lights, etc. We're getting that with, and this is Caslon. Chances are you have used Caslon in some capacity. The source for this is going to show a reproduction of the original type specimen, which is a really interesting read through. But the type specimens, if you haven't made one yet, is a system so that you can see one of every letter or sort or number or ornament or rule, etc. within that typeface. So typefaces around this era are, either being carved out in wood or metal, and then you're making multiples of them. So you want to see what they look like, and then the type sellers would go around to the print shops and sell them. We of course now do this all digitally, but it was really up till, I'll say, even modernism. That's why the Helvetica movie that we were talking about is so interesting, because it shows the sort of last days of this era of getting our typefaces from foundry to the printers to the designers. So we had Caslon, Egyptian typefaces, also known as slab serifs. These became more on trend, and this is Rockwell, just so you can see the slab serifs. So slab serifs, there we go. We have the extra little, I'll call it blocks here. So our serifs are exaggerated. Just to go back to this one, serif is these, I'm going to call them the little phalanges at the ends. They look like little feet. These are going to give more body weight to whatever it is you are advertising or designing. Thorn also created what's called the fat face typefaces. So you're going to see the thick-thin interaction. And if we think about what we saw with the sort of Gothic area, it's still a little bit hard to read. Something like this would probably would be better for, say, a headline typeface, or one that would display, the display typefaces, as we call them, to capture attention. And the same thing with the slab serifs. It's going to give the emphasis points. And I think this is around the period where you all last were discussing things. Arts and crafts movement up through Art Nouveau. These are going to sort of blend together because some of the artists and designers went from one period to the other. It's a natural evolution. It's going to happen quite a bit. We're going to see people coming up that, worked in the Bauhaus that then went into the international Swiss and modern style. They're going to, arc through multiple periods because work is always evolving. Our key features for this period in design, we're going to have more of the handcrafted artistry, natural and organic forms, simplicity and functionality, and this integration of art and life. And our key players, and this is just a few. There's many, many more, so feel free to dig into each of these topics if you want to see more designers in this period. But the key ones are going to be William Morris, John Ruskin, Charles Rennie Mackintosh. I put Eric Gill in here. He's one that's going to bridge a couple also, and Frank Lloyd Wright. And Eric Gill, why we'll talk about him is if you're into type, you're going to recognize Gill and Gill Sans. So Gill Sans is a typeface that is still on all of our computers, and it's stemming from this period. This is one of Ruskin's pieces printed by William Morris, which, you're going to see a lot of these throughout history. Everyone's sort of chit-chatting. Some are working together, sort of like if you're in art history and you talked about Picasso and Braque, same thing. You're working together and exchanging ideas, but you're getting this natural sort of flourish, and then you're having your typeface set within that. So it's this, as we just saw, the natural and organic forms, the functionality, and the integration of art and life. So it's a really purposeful driven period. Now, of course, if you're looking beyond the design, if you're also looking at the architecture or the silversmithing or the pottery, you're going to see how all of these visually tie together. Strawberry Thief is probably one of the more popular ones to go to when you're looking for William Morris designs. If you are into pattern creating in your design, this designer is one to look at, just so that you can see how repeats are created. This one's one of those that can, even though it was in theory with arts and crafts, it could also be merged into nouveau. So we can sort of see how these two are working together. And this is a poster for the Scottish Musical Review, and it's by Macintosh. But again, the natural, the flourish, sort of working together. And this is just so that you can see all the typefaces that Eric Gill created that we are all still using today. I would say the two that are the most popular, of course, Gill Sans and Perpetua. So again, I have the link there so you can go read more on this if you're interested. But, taking those, sentiments that we're seeing within, I'll say, the painting and patterning, and bringing that sort of humanistic approach into the typefaces at the time. To Art Nouveau we go. The key features, and again, you can see there's similarities. We have our organic forms. We have our curvilinear shapes. We have the whiplash and the swooping lines. So these are like the swashes, so to speak. We're going to have some of those ornate and decorative elements. The compositions are going to be flat and 2D, as well as asymmetrical and dynamic. Side note on that. You'll probably throughout the semester hear me say static versus dynamic. So we could think of something static as like, I usually pick on a formal wedding invitation, whereas the dynamic is something that, is going to have a little bit more energy, like we'll see in the Bauhaus or in this period, of course, since we're talking about it. So static versus dynamic. And in this case, it's going to be dynamic. We're going to have some innovations in typography and an integration of art and design. Again, there's more info linked below for you to dig into this. Mucha is going to be one of our key players. Louis Comfort, Tiffany, Aubrey Beardsley. Oh, and there's Macintosh again. So again, we're going to see some of this from here on out, people working in multiple art movements. One that didn't get mentioned, but is in this sort of in this period. So, we were reading about Toulouse-Lautrec, of course, with post-expressionism and expressionism, but his work in the poster sense can fit in this period. Also, we have a lot of typographic studies. This is this chromatic lithography that I was talking about. So you're working with the stones and multiple stones to make one composite image. And this is for the Moulin Rouge. And chances are you've already read and heard about this era of poster design, but I did want to include it so that you sort of had an inkling of where it fit within the grand scheme of things. What's interesting, of course, with this period is up until this point, we've been working with European, Russian, Oriental cultures, but this one's going to sort of hop into, we're going to see more of the design happening stateside also. And I will always include posters of cats. So we have Penfield's Harper's. It's a May 1897 cover for their magazine. And again, if we were to compare it to the Toulouse-Lautrec, we can see that lithographic essence to that. So our colors have that sort of inked up, soft appearance to it. And again, the links are all here for you to dig a little bit deeper. Another cover for Harper's Bazaar. What's interesting with this period, it's those ornaments, the swooshes and the swashes that we were talking about. And you can see how these all get integrated within it. So something like this, just as a side note, if you are in the field and someone was like, I want 4-color, I want spot color, I want 2-color. This would fall under 2-color because we're working with the red and a green. And then whatever the color of the paper is doesn't count because that would be the base. So if you're working with the 2-color spread, that's what this would essentially fall under. And let's see this one. This one actually probably would be 2-color also. And 1, 2, 3. This one is 3 or 4 colors. So you're able to get multiple colors for your print production run. And it just, So this is a magazine. Let's just put today's sort of sentiments on this. You have your magazine at the newspaper stand, in this case, or us in the grocery stores or bookstore today. How are you as a designer going to catch the attention of the viewer to buy the magazine and continue, of course, the print production cycle? Chances are color in some way is going to inform that shopping decision. And lo and behold, all of this structure is set up during, of course, this time. This is a poster for an art exhibit. This is created by Ferdinand André. And this is also the link that I shared here. All of these are global print and designs. So you'll get to see, where they're from and how each country is dealing with the same sort of philosophies in design. Yes, it's another cat. Of course it is, but this is one of the ones that you'll probably see a lot of the time representing this period. It's a poster for the Chat Noir. It's a cabaret, and this is created by Theophile Steinlen. And again, 1, 2. We have our 2-color separation process. This one is... So we've been looking at posters for the most part. This one, as well as being used for posters, we're also starting to think about package design and, advertisements. And, if this is an advertisement card, then your business could be put at the bottom, and then you could go there and know that you can get your rachati there. So we're jumping into that sort of consumeristic aspect of design in this period. We will see, of course, a little bit of pushback in the future, but, the difference between art and design, it's typically said, is just the client. In art, it's you. You're the client. You can do whatever you want. But in design, the client is whoever, you're advertising for. And this is the era where that consumeristic aspect is taking place. All right, so we are caught up on our Around the World tour, and our next class we're going to explore the Bauhaus. And we'll also maybe tiptoe into international and Swiss style so that we can see, from here, the flourish, the filigrees, those extras and those swooshes are almost going to have, a pendulum effect. From one way the pendulum swings, and it'll swing back. So from all to a more simplified design style. All right. I hope you have enjoyed this tour, and we will chat next in the Bauhaus.